Yeah. Well, yes, of course, because there's nothing more isolated than being a novelist. It's easy. I sit in a room by myself all the time, with surrounded by fictional characters who give me advice, and a dog that likes everything I write. Yes, that's the flipping answer. The truth is, yes, you have to research those things. And research as a novelist is a very, very difficult thing to categorize. You have to come to the point where you feel like you understand the characters. And in my experience, in actuality, the book that I wrote that required the most psychological research was Heart's War. And the reason for that was because the people in the prisoner of war camp in World War II that I was writing about had the most interesting psychology of any group that I had to write about. Because there they were in Germany, and oftentimes they were bored at the same time that they were terrified. And that's a really unusual psychological thing. And so, in research, when I wrote that book, the one thing I was certain about, and I've said this in interviews before, but absolutely certain about, was I was not going to have some 80-year-old guy who had gone to a prisoner of war camp call me up and say, "That's not the way it was," or, "Blimey, mate, that's not the way it was." No, I wanted to get it accurate, but not accurate in the sense of the buildings were on, lifted 18 inches off the ground, and they had wooden floors. All of that stuff that I did get accurate. It is about the accuracy of emotion. That's what you have to work hard to get. If you want to write, and you want to write truthfully, regardless of whether it's a thriller, or a romance, or even a novel about vampires falling in love, you need to write about emotional truths. And my next book will be about vampires falling in love. They seem to sell a lot.
¿Y cómo fue esa investigación entonces? ¿Dónde encontraste ese material? Porque no es algo que esté muy común en los libros de historia.
The one thing that I learned as a journalist when I was young was how to research things. And that requires you to talk to people. It requires you to look into the offbeat places. And so I would do that. There's no hard and fast rule. As a novelist, it's not as if you can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to spend 6 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days researching, and then stop. You simply read, you absorb, you talk to people, you see things, you hear things, you listen, and there comes a point where you say, I'm ready to write. And I wish I could quantify it, because it would make it easier for all of you who might want to write something. So, at least 6 months, 3 weeks, 4 days. It's not possible to say. You have to research, you have to understand, so that you understand your characters as well as they understand you.
En el caso concreto de la guerra de Hart, ¿hablaste con sobrevivientes?
Yes, well, in Heart's War, it was easy because my father spent 1,000 days in prisoner of war camp. And there came a wonderful moment after the book had come out and the movie came out with Bruce Willis and Colin Farrell, who is more good looking than you even know. And I have to say I was wildly, madly disappointed with many of the things that they had done in the movie. And the thing I resented the most was that I found myself with my father in the back of a limousine going to one of the most important television shows in America, where the two of us, who both really didn't like much of what we'd seen in the movie, were getting ready to lie through our teeth and smile and say, "Oh, it's great." And I think ultimately what I resented the most was I like to think of myself as a pretty honest guy, and boy, was I not. Yeah. But I will say one thing about that movie, if any of you see it. And this is a story also. My MGM flew my son, who was then 19 and wants to be a filmmaker, and myself and my father all over to Prague, where they were filming the movie. Bruce Willis was being paid $20 million for 6 weeks' work, so if you can get that job, I recommend it. But we got over there, and my father, it was moving very slowly with his cane and whatnot, and I were taken to a screening room where they were going to show us some outtakes from the film. And there's a scene at the start of the movie where all the prisoners of war are on a train being taken to Germany, to prisoner of war camp. And they're all stuck in there and it's very cold. And they pull into a train station, and suddenly over the horizon you can see 2 American fighter planes, 2 P-51s. The Cadillac of the air was called. And these 2 fighters come, and they come wheeling in, and they open up with those 3 mounted 50 caliber machine guns on each wing, and they are just blowing the hell out of that train station. And the bullets are coming flying through the cars, where these are American soldiers being shot by their own Air Force. And there's a wonderful sequence where one of the soldiers gets through a little, in cattle cars they have these little windows, and he forces himself through, and he falls to the ground, and he fractures his shoulder while he's doing it, and he struggles towards the door because they can only be opened from the outside. And as he is opening it from the outside, machine gun bullets come racing towards him, and almost split him in 2. But he gets the door open, he gets the men out. This scene is not in the book. I wish it was. It is everything that Hollywood does right. Explosions, bodies flying, noise, sound, acting, and it's just absolutely stirring. And they showed us this scene. And we're sitting there, my father and I. My son was actually at the hotel getting a massage at the time, but less said about that, the better. And my father turns to the producer and the director, and Willis was there as well. And they say to him, "What did you think of that scene?" And my father says, "Well, I think that it would have been better if you followed John's book more closely." Of course, nodding my head up like that.